welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. All of us know that to succeed in business, we need strong communication skills. And that's the reason I host this video conversation and also make it available on podcast. Every week, I bring you, and I benefit from it as well, I bring us outstanding, recognized leaders in the field of communication. By listening to their tips, their strategies, their guidelines, and their examples, we certainly have the opportunity to improve our sales, our marketing, our leadership, our management, our customer service, our motivation, and yes, our profits as well. Today, we have a return guest. Dianna Booher was a guest on the Biz Communication Show a few weeks back. I learned that in early June, she would be releasing her 47th book. That's right. She has written more books than some people have read, I like to say. Her 47th book, Communicate Like a Leader. We're very fortunate that she's here today to talk with us about some of the major points regarding communication that she makes into the book. So now, welcome Dianna Booher back again on the Biz Communication Show.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to be with you.
You know, Dianna, one of the things that I constantly find people confused about is what we're engaging in now, and that is social media. We're engaging in it because people are viewing the show through social media, or they're listening to it through podcasts. And so many people have misconceptions about social media. And the main one that I'd like you to address, as you do in the book, is that we will really boost our business and we'll become well-known and greatly profitable if we get thousands and thousands of followers on all of the social media platforms. Give us your ideas on that instead, please.
Well, actually, Bill, I think there's really not a strong correlation between number of followers and engagement. In fact, sometimes the more followers, the less the engagement. And it can really be a time suck. Sometimes it's just addictive. People get on there and they think, I'm going to spend 15 minutes, and they wind up and they spent 5 hours on there with actually no return. My advice and the advice of most social media experts, and I don't claim to be an expert on social media, that's my area of expertise is in other areas of leadership communication, but master one or two platforms. Find out where your audience is. Who do you want to communicate with? Where do they stay? And master that one or two platforms, and then really engage. And in fact, someone has said that 20% of the followers on Twitter are fake accounts. They're people who, you can go to Fiverr and buy followers, but you want to really communicate with those people, answer their questions, be responsive to them. And then you don't necessarily just spend more and more time putting out information that nobody's reading. Make sure that you're putting out valuable information, whatever you supply to them, the content that they value, and then you will connect with them. So there has to be a correlation in their engagement, not necessarily numbers. It's not a numbers game.
I think one of the ways we could explain it would be that it's not just for broadcasting, that you just send out messages, that you just tell who you are and what you do. It's truly a two-way interaction where, in fact, the people who are probably most successful on social media are not those who just promote themselves all the time, but they highlight other people as well.
Right. It's listening. It's passing on, or being a curator sometimes, passing on good information wherever you get that good information.
And getting back to what you were saying about people who have tens of thousands of followers on Twitter, and that you can buy followers even. If I go to Twitter and somebody tries to connect with me there and I see that they've got 85,000 followers, how much personal attention am I going to get from those people? What kind of dialogue and interaction? Probably zero.
Limited, and you don't have any control on those platforms. Remember, the goal should be to use those platforms to drive followers to your blog, to your website, because there you can control them. You're renters when you have followers on Facebook and Twitter and whatever. You're renting that space. The rules could change anytime.
Thank you for those observations, and they're very wise. Okay. One of the comments as a communication consultant for businesses, and even as a keynote speaker, one of the comments that you hear so often is, what in the world can we do in business about the problem of micromanagement? It is so widespread. I was interested in the book that you propose attacking the problem even before it mushrooms into a huge problem. And your suggestion is not just to cure the patient when the patient is sick, but let's have some preventive medicine. In other words, we can train people before they reach these top positions. We can train them not to have micromanagerial habits, right?
That's true. And actually, that's the concept behind the whole book, is to prevent micromanagement before it happens. That is the essence of the book, because that's one of the key complaints that I hear very frequently. I had a friend who was always complaining. I mean, every weekend when we would get together, that was her first complaint. Oh, my boss, it's stressful to people. But I also tell the story in the very beginning of the book. Mitch, one of my executive vice president friends, came in once, and this was seven or 8 years ago, and he said, "Dianna, I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is they've laid off." He worked for a major telecom. He said they've laid off our entire division, about 20,000 people. He said, "I've gotten venture capitalists, however, venture capital with 2 other partners, and we have bought a small telecom, and I brought over 45 of the brilliant people that we've had about middle management, and we put them in executive leadership positions over at our other small telecom. The issue is, though, they were in mid-management there. And so he made a gesture about knee level. He says, they're communicating at about this level, and we need them to be communicating at about this level, saluting or making a gesture here at about head level. He said, now, even though they're still brilliant in their technical roles, they need to communicate with the board of directors, with our suppliers, with our customers, with the public, to bring in new business. And they needed to have skills at a higher strategic level. And so I began to think, he said, can you help me? Can you train these people? And I began to look at what are those foundational leadership skills that someone needs to have to communicate with all their communities, with the stakeholders, with their employees, with their customers, with all across functional lines. If you look at it, it's like speaking and writing and just conversing one-on-one and negotiating and keeping their networks active, etc. And so that's basically what I put together in the book. What are those essential skills that keep you from being a micromanager? And that's what I put together.
My guess is that micromanagers, many of them, are possibly well-meaning people. They think that they can do their own job and they can do everybody else's job. Unfortunately, that diminishes everybody's work, doesn't it?
It does. It makes them feel overwhelmed. And I hear that comment frequently. I have to do their job, my job too. But the problem is, not only is it frustrating for them, it's frustrating for the people who work for them, because they feel like nobody trusts me. Why are they breathing down my neck? Why are they following me around? They don't trust me to make decisions. And so it's increases everybody's workload, because the person who's being micromanaged, they are always documenting every little thing, double checking every little thing. And that's not a bad thing, to double check and make sure you're doing quality work. but you go through extra steps to protect your backside, so to speak, if you think somebody doesn't trust you. And you're always having these little side conversations to see, what are they distrusting? Why don't they trust me? It's fearful, it's stressful, it's emotionally wrenching. You're always, pouring your heart out to somebody on the job. It's just anti-productive for both people.
It's not good for morale. It's not good for productivity. It's not good for stability.
No, turnover. You mentioned it. That's a good one. Stability. People leave, and you only have your poor performers left if you do that long enough.
This topic, I was especially drawn to it in your book because I have experienced it, not as a manager, though I spent 20 years in management, but the prime example to me of how a leader who is a micromanager, and I guess maybe those are contradictory terms, but a person in a top position who's a micromanager, the prime example I have is that our CEO in that organization called a meeting, annual planning meeting, for 6 p.m. on Sunday. Now, that's, as Paul Harrier would say, that's not the rest of the story. The rest of the story is that it was Super Bowl Sunday. And Super Bowl kicks off at 6 p.m. in our time zone. Many micromanagers are unaware and really don't care very much about the life of their people outside the work. They're not supposed to have a life outside the work. In extreme cases, you find that, don't you?
You do. In fact, I have done 2 different blogs on how to manage someone that's like that breathing down your neck, and how to transform your own habits. If you recognize yourself and you think, I am that kind of boss, how do you change those habits? So I've got blogs on that. And in fact, just run one on how 15-item checklist to learn to delegate. Sometimes it's not intentional. It's just that person has never learned how to appropriately delegate, how to do it, when to do it, why to do it, and what are the steps, so that you don't fear losing control. I mean, that's one of the key things, that the person is afraid the project won't be done well if I don't oversee it all the way to the end. And so once they learn proper delegation techniques and when or how to test if you can turn it over to this person, if they have adequate skills to handle it, then you can relax and do that. So I've put together a little checklist. How do you know? Can you trust? When to turn it over? How to do it? What things you need to tell that person so that you can ensure it's done well. And I've had that downloaded more times than probably any other download that I've offered as a complimentary item.
And when you delegate, as you say, trust and let go. You don't come back in 15 minutes and check on the progress of this project that you've assigned.
Right. You know what the check back points are, and then let it go.
Dianna, we've talked about a pretty heavy subject here. Let's switch to something a little bit lighter, which you do in the book when you say that the workplace does not have to be entirely dead serious, that there is a place for lightheartedness and laughter. You go back to your literature teacher. Tell us what you learned from your literature teacher that we can apply to business.
Yes, Miss Amos. She was loved. Let me say, first of all, she was scary looking. She really was. She was an old maid back in the day when we used that term. I know it's not PC now, but she really was scary looking. But she made fun of herself. She used this self-deprecating humor to talk about that. But nobody could remember that by the end of the year because she was so funny. And she had such a quick wit. I remember Chris, a student in 11th grade, coming in late one morning. He missed almost all of first period. He looked like it was drunk. It had a hangover. And he walked in, and rather than reprimanding him, she said, "Chris, if you're sleeping more than 3 hours a night, you're sleeping your life away." And, she was just always such quick wit that we just loved her. She used to get mums from people who had graduated 20 years ago at homecoming. I learned from that when you allow humor, when you use it in your job, when you use self-deprecating humor, you open people's minds, you expand your influence. Everybody likes to be around someone who is lighthearted and funny. The reason I think most people don't do that and don't allow that at the job, they think it takes too much time. It's taking time away from serious matters. That's not the case. It just gives people a chance to release tension, particularly when you're dealing with a heavy subject. You need time to release that heaviness so that you can be more productive.
I like what you say about self-deprecating humor. We certainly would not want to make fun of other people in the group. That destroys our credibility and it hurts their morale. So that's one guideline. And definitely another is keep your humor in good taste. The jokes that a guy might tell out on the golf course don't belong in the boardroom.
Right. What you find funny or not funny reveals much about your values and your core character.
In negotiations, one of the problems that many of us make is that we look on negotiation, whether we're going for venture capital or whether we're trying to get a contract or whatever, we look on it as a one-step process. We want everything now, and we're not looking ahead. In the book, you say that this is a narrow view. Our view should be more comprehensive. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think anytime you approach a negotiation, you should always do it with the next deal and the next negotiation in mind. And what I mean by that is a lot of mergers, a lot of just one-time negotiation situations with a strategic partner or supplier fall apart because people negotiate so hard. They try to come to agreement so hard that they sour the relationship, so that once you get a deal in place or you sign a contract, there's such hard feelings that nobody wants to really cooperate. They don't want to go the second mile. So if something needs to be changed or modified down the road, nobody wants to cooperate. And so if you think at the end you still like that person even after the contract's signed, that's a good thing, because you may need referrals from them, you may need some modification, you may need them to refer you to the next person. You always want to think, when I get this deal done, could I still do a second deal with them? Could I still go back and ask them to refer me to a friend for some other reason or favor? And if you can't, then you've ruined the relationship from the very beginning. And tone has a lot to do with it.
You've been a very popular keynote speaker at conferences and conventions for about 3 decades. And I like the fact that in the book, you talk about speeches not being just presentations, a one-way thing, but you describe speeches as conversations. Elaborate on that for us.
Well, it's a conversation in the sense of intimacy. I say, ditch the desk. And by that, it could be if you're in your office or even in your on a stage, on a riser, you ditch the lectern in that case. But you want to keep the emotional connection with people. And when I speak, even if I'm up on a riser, frequently I will go out into the audience. I might walk all the way to the back of the room and stick the microphone in somebody's face and say, tell me a time when such and such, or how do you feel about that idea? It changes your demeanor. It changes their demeanor. It relaxes your body language so that they really feel like in step with you. It changes your inflection. It reminds you that you are not preaching at them, but that you are talking to them, with them, not at them. And it reminds you to apply whatever concept you have or whatever technique or strategy to them, to an individual. You're not out talking to the world. You're talking to an individual that needs to use your information tomorrow. And part of what I consider, or what I'm told frequently by most people, is that you're practical. Whatever you talk about is really practical. And when I look at somebody, when I talk about ditching the desk or ditching the lectern, I want what I say to be usable information. And when you think about a presentation being practical, that's what I mean. They need to be able to take it home and use it with their family, use it at home, use it at the office tomorrow, talking with a colleague.
As a speech coach, one of the things I constantly tell my clients is that you will know that you have given a very impressive and memorable and helpful speech when people don't refer to it as a speech. When they say instead, I love the ideas that you shared. And as you mentioned, if somebody says to you, this is practical information, they're not focusing on how it came to them, but they're focusing on the ideas and the content, which is what it should really be all about anyway. You mentioned something I want to get back to a minute ago where you talked about ditching the desk. You and I, Dianna, across the years many times, have walked into the office of executives who had us seated maybe 15 to 20 feet away, and they're behind this huge desk, which I suppose they think is almost like a throne of their kingdom. But you have mentioned to me that you and I share a practice, and that is when somebody's in our office, we're not hidden behind a desk. That's a barrier. Go out there and sit by them in a chair.
Absolutely. In fact, in my office here, I have I'm sitting behind my PC, but I have two chairs over here on the other side. So when somebody comes into my office, I walk around and sit on that side. And you'll notice over here in the fireplace behind me, I have two chairs there in my office. So I will walk over and sit by the fireplace with them, or I'll go over here to my conference table and sit around the fireplace, around the conference table. So I have several places to move in my office. I have a rather large office here. I don't sit here behind my PC and talk to them behind my desk. And the same thing applies in whatever venue, wherever you find yourself. Get away from any kind of physical barrier, whatever that physical barrier, whether it's height, standing on a riser, get eye level. I mean, if you're talking with a child, you squat down, you bend down so that you're at their eye level, so that you are not talking down to people, you are talking with them.
We have had the time fly by here. And so I need to move along now to ask you, how can we get your new book? Oh, by the way, you have a copy you can show us?
Sure. Just happened to.
Just happened to.
Just happened to have a copy of that.
Communicate Like a Leader. How, when, and where will that be available?
It's available at any online bookstore, or you can go to the book website at Communicate Like a Leader Book. Be sure and put the word book in there. CommunicateLikeALeaderBook.com. And you can order it there at any online bookstore as well.
I'm very happy to endorse this book. When I read it, I picked up so many, as you would put it, practical ideas that I will be sharing, not only in my own business, but with corporations and associations that I present to, because there are many workable ideas here. And very soon, Dianna, you will see my video and text review on Amazon.
Thank you.
You can feel a 5-star rating coming on.
Thank you.
Dianna, this has been terrific. We really appreciate this. We appreciate the opportunity to learn more about the book. Tell us about how people could get in touch with you, please.
Yes, my regular website is Booher Research, BooherResearch.com, and my last name has an H in it, Booher, just like boo her, but I hope they don't.
I know that they
will.
will.
Time hearing that, BooherResearch.com.
A good way to have people remember your name, I say with mine, Lampton, a lamp that weighs a ton. Give them a few mnemonic devices there to help out. And since Dianna has shared her contact information, I will share mine. Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. So my website is biz, that's B-I-Z, bizcommunicationguy.com. Invite you to go there, look at the services that I can offer you as an individual, offer your company. And also, while you're there, be sure to sign up for my newsletter where you will get tips, strategies, guidelines, how-tos, practical, as Dianna would say, that will benefit your business. Again, Dianna Booher, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it. We will want to hear more in future months. We'll be back with you again. I hope that you'll be willing to be a return guest.
Thank you, Bill. I certainly will.
And thanks to all of you who joined us via the video portion or through podcasting. Be with us next week when again, we will bring you the Biz Communication Show.